Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really thought-provoking and frankly controversial book called Copernicus Refuted: How a Unified Theory of Observed Motion Reveals the Truth. It introduces a completely disruptive premise. Basically, what if 500 years of astronomical consensus, the literal foundation of how we view our solar system, is actually just one massive, complex theoretical illusion? The author argues that modern astronomy has essentially traded real, everyday observation for abstract math, and by doing so, hid the true nature of the universe. So my goal today is to objectively break down the author's arguments step by step so we can understand the exact mechanics behind this paradigm-shifting claim.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our intellectual roadmap for today. We'll look at 1. A simple daily observation, 2. Challenging the heliocentric model, 3. Reevaluating the space age, and 4. The psychology and spiritual stakes. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1. A simple daily observation.
The whole thesis here starts with a super basic question about something you can see right from your own backyard. If the sun, the moon, and the stars all move from east to west, do they share a common cause? The source uses a really relatable analogy for this. Think about it. If you see 3 different rivers all flowing downhill, common sense tells you they're flowing downhill for the exact same reason: gravity, right? You wouldn't go and invent 3 totally separate geological theories for each river. Well, the author applies that exact same logic to the sky, asking why on Earth we accept multiple, vastly different mechanisms for celestial bodies that do the exact same thing.
And this perfectly illustrates that core contrast. On one side, we have the mainstream heliocentric explanation. To explain why things move east to west, it says the stars do it because the Earth spins. The moon does it because the Earth spins and the moon orbits the Earth. The sun does it because the Earth spins and the Earth orbits the sun. The author points out that this setup requires 3 incredibly complex, perfectly synchronized mechanisms. But on the flip side, the author proposes a unified theory, a simple reality where the sun, moon, and stars just move east to west around a stationary Earth. To back up this push for simplicity, the text weaponizes a fundamental rule of science, Occam's razor. You probably heard of it. It's the principle that the simplest explanation that accounts for all the observed data is usually the correct one. The author's argument here is that by sticking to this highly complex, multi-layered model of a spinning, orbiting globe, modern astronomy is actually ignoring its own basic scientific guidelines just to protect established theories. Now, according to the text, it wasn't always like this. For over 1,000 years, during the medieval period, science was actually based on direct observation. People just trusted what they saw, which was a stationary Earth with a moving sky. But the author traces a massive shift starting back in 1543 with Copernicus. He introduced a mathematical hypothesis that directly went against observable reality. The text argues that from Copernicus, through Newton in the late 1600s, all the way up to the space age in 1957, complex math gradually infiltrated and replaced empirical, observation-based science. It basically became a culture of trusting abstract math way more than our own eyes. Moving on to Section 2, Challenging the Heliocentric Model.
The author doesn't just stick to history or philosophy, though. They aggressively challenge the established model using real-world, practical institutions. They outline 4 specific examples. First up, planetariums. Every planetarium uses a geocentric projection system to accurately map the sky. The author claims this proves the Earth-centered model actually matches reality. Second, airports. Aviation operates entirely on the assumption that the Earth is stationary. Pilots aren't up there constantly compensating for a globe spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. Third, observatories. They get these crystal-clear, long-exposure tracking shots of distant stars, which the text argues would be literally impossible if the Earth was violently racing through space at 67,000 miles per hour. And finally, lighthouses. According to the book, lighthouse beams can be seen by ships at distances that absolutely should be blocked by the physical curvature of a globe.
Now, you might be wondering about the standard scientific rebuttal to all this. The usual defense for why we don't feel the Earth spinning or flying through space is scale. The idea is that the Earth is so massive, the forces essentially cancel out and give us a smooth ride. Well, the author completely rejects this scale excuse, arguing that it violates basic physics. The text asserts that in reality, massive forces acting simultaneously on a huge object would create amplified instability and turbulence, definitely not perfect stillness. So in their view, the absolute stillness we experience every day is actual proof that the Earth just isn't moving.
That brings us to Section 3, Reevaluating the Space Age.
So if the Earth is actually stationary, how does the author explain the entire space age? The text zeroes right in on the famous 1972 Apollo 17 blue marble photograph. The author lays out a fascinating mathematical claim here. That photo supposedly was taken from 29,400 kilometers away. The moon is roughly 384,000 kilometers away. Since the Earth is almost 4 times larger than the moon, the author calculates that from a distance of only 29,400 kilometers, the Earth should look absolutely massive, completely filling the camera frame. But instead, the Earth in the photo looks like a neat, self-contained little sphere. The text argues that this framing is mathematically impossible, making the image fabricated propaganda meant to make humanity feel like a tiny speck in a vast void. But the author takes it a step further, pointing to a pretty staggering number published in 2019 by the European Space Agency: 630,000 kilometers. The ESA discovered that the outermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, known as the geocorona, actually extends 630,000 kilometers out into space. To put that into perspective, that is almost twice the entire distance from the Earth to the moon.
So the crucial point here is summed up perfectly by this quote from lead researcher Igor Balukian. He said the moon flies through Earth's atmosphere. We were not aware of it until we dusted off observations made over 2 decades ago. Think about what that implies. If the moon flies through Earth's atmosphere, it means that for over 60 years of space exploration, including every single Apollo mission, human beings have never actually left Earth's atmospheric envelope. According to the text, we've never actually entered the true vacuum of space.
The author uses this 2019 discovery to try and explain away a massive engineering contradiction. Skeptics have asked for years how rockets can possibly use combustion or push against anything in a complete vacuum. Well, the text claims this atmospheric discovery solves the whole thing in 3 steps. Step 1, rockets actually launch into an extended atmosphere, not a vacuum. Step 2, combustion engines use that available atmospheric matter to function. And Step 3, because they never actually leave the atmosphere, there's absolutely no need to explain any mysterious vacuum propulsion. For the author, this is just more proof that the official narrative is fundamentally broken.
Let's move to our final pillar, Section 4, Psychology and Spiritual Stakes. Let's see how all of this builds up.
So a huge question remains. Why would a truth this massive be suppressed in the first place? According to the text, the very first barrier is cognitive dissonance. That's the mental stress you get when you encounter information that completely shatters your deeply held beliefs. The author theorizes that society actively resists connecting the dots on this unified theory because the mental trauma of doing so would just be too intense. I mean, to accept a stationary Earth means accepting that centuries of science are wrong, billions of dollars in space programs are theatrical, and established human authority is lying to you. The idea is that people instinctively shrink away from the pain of realizing their entire worldview might be built on false premises.
But the text asserts the ultimate motive for all this suppression is deeply spiritual. The author contrasts 2 totally different worldviews. On one hand, you have biblical vindication, which suggests an Earth-centric creation, where humanity is the primary focus of a creator. On the other hand, you have the materialistic worldview, where Earth is just an accidental, pale blue dot floating in an endless universe. The argument here is that the scientific establishment actively suppresses the geocentric model, specifically to avoid validating Scripture. The author claims that if the Bible is right about cosmology, it threatens the entire materialistic framework that tries to explain creation without a creator.
We're going to wrap up today's explainer with a highly provocative thought, straight from the author's conclusion. It frames this whole debate as more than just a matter of science. It's presented as a test of moral and spiritual integrity. The text directly challenges the reader: will you be the child pointing out the emperor has no clothes, or will you love and practice a lie? It's a stark choice between trusting human systems or embracing what the author views as divine revelation and observable truth. No matter where you personally stand on modern astronomy, this text undeniably presents an intense, layered challenge to the paradigm we've all been taught. It really leaves us to reflect on how we evaluate evidence, authority, and the very nature of the universe we live in. Thanks for joining me today.